This is Ivan Toney. He's a professional footballer. A really good one. He stares a lot, but don't mind him. This is Sandro Tonali, also a professional footballer, also a really good one. And this is Lucas Paqueta. He's not only a great baller, but the man can dance. Look at him go. Two of these players have received sizable bans for sports betting in the past year and a half. One of them already served their ban, one of them has just finished serving their ban, and the other is under investigation. Wait, I've just noticed something about these pictures. There we go. These are sports betting companies. That's right, these players are condemned from participating in an activity that they themselves endorse. These are just 3 high-profile cases amongst the hundreds in recent memory on all sporting levels. And this goes far beyond just betting on sports. This is Neymar playing poker during a celebration for his daughter. Going back to the 90s, Paul Merson, former Arsenal and Aston Villa star, lost £7 million through his gambling addiction at the peak of his career. Chris Sutton, former Premier League winner with Blackburn, had a huge problem himself. My mum took control of my income for a time, and her solution was pretty drastic. She gave me £10 a day to live on. This man was once the highest paid player in the Premier League on £10,000 a week. It's everywhere. The owners of clubs like Brentford, Brighton, and Stoke made their billions by operating betting organizations and by gambling themselves. Does football, and pro sports for that matter, have a gambling problem? It's a polarizing topic. 11 out of 20 Premier League teams have betting companies as their main shirt sponsors this year. Last year, that number was 8. As a matter of fact, Chelsea were inches away from making it 9. Fan backlash ensured that deal wouldn't go through. One can only imagine how much it would have been worth, which is why I don't think the increase in the number of these sponsorships is a coincidence. It was announced back in April of 2023 that as of the 2026-27 football season, betting sponsors will no longer be allowed on the front of football kits in the Premier League. They historically pay a lot, so I suspect these clubs and sponsors know this and are cashing in while they both still can. The main reason for the ban is that many of these sponsors, who operate under the same umbrella, have been accused and fined for breaches in social responsibility and more. We'll touch on that later in the video. Having said all of that, despite the ban, from a consumer perspective, I doubt this will change much. Billboards will still exist. Halftime ads will still exist. Anytime I've been in any town or city centre in the UK, I can't walk more than 100 meters before seeing a bookies of some kind. To a lot of people all over the world in various leagues, not just the Premier League, sports betting and sports, not just football, are one in the same product. According to a report by the Grandview Research, global sports betting revenues totaled $91.4 billion in 2023 and will reach over $180 billion by 2030 at a 10% annual growth rate. A projection that I imagine is a significant underestimate because the next generation are already being indoctrinated. An Australian study in 2014 reported that 42% of teenagers aged mostly between 12 and 17 could recall at least one gambling sponsor from televised sports. A South London study in 2019 claimed that 46% of young people aged 8 to 16 could do the same. At this point in time, there is far too much of an association with betting for the train to stop. These companies have become essential financial pillars. In the Premier League, not everyone is offered tens of millions from the likes of Qualcomm or Emirates or Etihad or Ed Sheeran. It's hard to say no to the alternative, I guess. And it's also worth noting that just because a lot of these clubs don't have betting sponsors on their jerseys doesn't mean they don't work with them. Almost every Premier League team has a sports betting partner. This goes for dozens of teams further down the pyramid. Fun fact, in 2023, Luton Town were the only club in the entire league to not show gambling adverts in their stadium for league games. It's very noble of them, but it's also a snub that's estimated to have cost them about £3 million. Bear in mind, this would have matched 17% of their 2023 total turnover. How much the ban on gambling sponsors will hurt the non-traditionally high-performing clubs is still to be seen. In this video, we're going to be talking about a couple of things: gambling in general, sports betting, the problems that come with it for players, fans, institutions, governments, the companies themselves, as well as a couple of misconceptions. Imagine that, a 5-minute intro. First time for everything. Hello everyone, hope we're all doing well. Welcome back to the channel. Now, I get a lot of gambling sponsor offers on this channel, and even though this video is mostly neutral, I don't think I'll be hearing from them anytime soon. So, subscribe, become a channel member. Also, if you or anyone that you know or care about are suffering from addiction of any kind, I've listed in the description a couple of international hotlines and resources that I hope can offer some assistance. Stay safe out there, guys. Take care of yourselves, your loved ones, your surrounding communities. It's important. I mean it. In terms of legalization, sports betting has a scattered and varied history around the world. In the UK, betting on sports has been officially legal since 1960. In South Africa, where Hollywood Bets, Brentford's main sponsor, is situated, it's been legal since 1996. Outside of the state of Nevada, it was essentially illegal until 2018. Since then, 38 states have legalized it in America. People are signing up to bet on sports faster than people subscribing to Cristiano Ronaldo's YouTube channel. 50 million subscribers in a week. Messi could never. It took some time for them to get with the program, but while they were doing so, the stance towards sports betting was fierce. Most large sporting leagues were completely against the practice, and the reasoning, which is shared by the rest of the world, mostly came down to 4 main points. First point, a fear of match manipulation by bad actors. It was believed that making sports betting legal would just make this more prevalent. Match manipulation comes in many forms, but the 3 you'll hear most often are match fixing, the manipulation of the outcome, kind of like what Juventus were accused of doing in 2005 by bribing referees, their Serie A titles were revoked, or this. Nah, you know what? He almost had it. Or when a Malaysian betting syndicate rigged the floodlights to turn off during a West Ham Crystal Palace game in 1997. When the result was what they wanted, they stopped the show. Spot fixing, the manipulation of one specific event, like putting the ball out a number of times, or card accumulation, as was the case in the A-League in Australia just this year. 3 players were arrested in that case. And finally, point shaving. The manipulation of score lines that doesn't affect the final result, like losing by a goal or scoring less than 3, etc. and etc. Second point, a fear of the harmful influence of the practice on society, but mostly young individuals. Third point, a fear of the focal point of sports shifting, that viewers may care more about betting outcomes than the sport itself. And fourth point, a fear of a shift in culture. This was a fear that society would come to see gambling and sports as one in the same, decreasing the stigma. In my thesaurus, it says that is, sports washing. Fearing these aspects is fair. However, spoiler alert, all of these things were already happening in the US, plus had already been happening around the world for decades. The only problem was that the leagues and the taxman weren't getting their cut. In a 2014 article in the New York Times, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver stated that he believed that the underground betting market in the States was worth up to $400 billion. Not sure how he stumbled upon that estimate because illegal bookmakers, they aren't exactly well known for reporting their earnings. But even if the real value was just a fraction of that, many believe that this could not only be regulated, but also taken advantage of. They were right. The American Gambling Association reported that $1.1 billion was spent on digital sports betting advertising alone in 2023. Official figures put the sports betting revenue of the same year in the US at almost $11 billion, with over $119 billion wagered. Sources say Drake was involved. He's Canadian, but he was still involved. Funneling previously unaccounted money back into the economy should be seen as a win. Regulation and monitoring have also meant that this is now easier than ever to catch cheaters, thanks to the wealth of data that is collected that can now be used to create trends and identify unusual patterns. This in itself is a growing niche in statistics. This is obvious, but I guess it's worth saying that even though sports betting was legalized, you're still not allowed to bet on the sport that you play. Reading straight from the English FA's website, the stance towards betting on football for players, managers, coaches, club staff, directors, and licensed agents is made quite clear. Don't bet on it. Don't pass on inside information. Protect the game. And if you don't, you will be caught. Every league in the world of every sport has a strikingly similar code of conduct. Hasn't stopped people though. In April of 2024, 24-year-old Jonte Porter, a Toronto Raptors player in the NBA, was banned for life after it was revealed he had bet millions on games between 2021 and 2023, including Raptors games. Now, I watched the odd NBA game here and there, but I wouldn't call myself an expert. From what I can gather, he wasn't the best player out there, but he still could have had a very decent career. Plus, this man had made at least $2.8 million in his young career. He has a championship-winning older brother in the league that signed a 5-year, $179 million contract, and so naturally, he decided that the best way forward for him was to spot fix and fake injuries within Raptors games and pass on that information to co-conspirators. You could make the claim that he was maybe jealous of his older brother's success, and to be fair, he wasn't making that much money in comparison to the mega contracts that get handed out in the NBA. Obviously not defending him, just listing out potential reasons. However, just to counter all of that, as per his own admission, he did the spot fixing that got him caught to get out from a large gambling debt that he had accumulated, which, if true, is sad to read. I imagine this is more common than we think. Lucas Paqueta, a 26-year-old Brazilian footballer from West Ham, is an immaculate player. Anyone that watches him will know that. He can carry the ball with ease, he can create, he's got an immense work rate. He's so good, in fact, that Manchester City were rumored to be heavily after his signature in the lead-up to the 2024-25 football season. Manchester City are going to be in dire need of creative footballers in the next few years, so his £85 million release clause wasn't seen as an issue at all. However, after it came out that Paqueta was being investigated by the FA for spot fixing in May, the rumors cooled down. The crime? Suspiciously getting yellow cards in matches between 2022 and 2024 against Leicester City, Aston Villa, Leeds United, and Bournemouth. How was he caught? A ton of bets were made that he would get those cards from Paqueta Island, a small island in Rio de Janeiro. Yes, his name isn't actually Lucas Paqueta, his nickname is the island he grew up on, which is very wholesome. The bets were placed using Betway, West Ham's main sponsor. This case is ongoing, so we can't really comment on anything, intention or otherwise. So, hypothetically, there is a case to be made that with Porter and Paqueta that it wasn't about money. However, that is not always the case. Calvin Ridley, at the time a 27-year-old Atlanta Falcons star receiver, was suspended for betting on NFL games. The man had already earned over $10 million in his 4-year NFL career and simply bet $1,500 one time. In the Premier League, Ivan Toney was making a serious name for himself for Brentford, scoring goals, being tipped to lead the line for England, then boom, he's charged with 262 breaches in the FA's rules. 262! Manchester City's lawyers took a look at this and knew even they couldn't beat these charges. The thing here is that Toney was climbing the ranks rapidly. Sources say he was on about $20,000 per week, which is low for a man of his talents in the league, but at the rate he was going at, one of the traditionally big teams would have snapped him up by now and potentially 10x'd that. At first glance, you could say that this was also about money, until you learn that he was diagnosed with a gambling addiction, admitting that he had been gambling religiously since he was 15. 8-month ban. Sandro Tonali, 24-year-old Italian Newcastle United midfielder, was banned from betting on matches from both his time with England and Italy in 2023. 10-month ban. He has also admitted to a gambling addiction. There is surely something to be said about known gambling addicts actively working within environments where they consistently endorse products that fuel their disease. Stretching beyond just sports gambling but gambling as a whole, young men between 16 and 30 have long been known to be the most active in wagering. Athletes not only fall slap bang in the range, but are even more susceptible to participating purely based on who they are. Ultra competitive, unrelenting, driven by improvement, willing to try different strategies, and most importantly, tons of disposable cash. Michael Jordan is probably the poster child for what I just described. His love of gambling is well documented. There are countless recollections of his competitive drive being the reason behind this.
Do you have a gambling problem?
No, I enjoy it. It's a hobby. If I had a problem, I'd be starving. I'd be hawking this watch. My championship rings, I would sell my house. I would do this.
In his case, we know for certain that it was never about the money. He just wanted to win. Sadly, this isn't the case for millions of regular people who bet on sports for the same reason that they play the lottery. The plumber, father of 3, who bets his mortgage or his kid's college fund. These guys are the ones that are often forgotten when things go wrong. When they gamble themselves into an early grave, who's to blame? Them for constantly participating, or the companies for knowingly targeting them? In November of 23, the UK Gambling Commission conducted a survey that suggested that up to 2.5% of the British population has a gambling problem. That would be about 1.6 million people. Sports betting has long been a contentious topic in the UK, and football is the national sport. Africa, particularly South Africa and Nigeria, contain some of the quickest growing markets in the world of sports betting. This is mostly due to the love of international sports. Similar time zones with most of Europe, English speaking, a lot of shared culture, Dricus du Plessis, Francis Ngannou, Didier Drogba, Victor Osimhen, you get the idea. I probably wouldn't believe this next stat if I didn't read it straight from the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare, but in 2022, they reported that 72.3% of Australians aged 18 and over reported spending money on gambling products in the past 12 months. 34% of them participated in sports betting products. In China, sports betting is an insanely huge market. However, sports betting in China is illegal. This may confuse some of you. It confused me, because a metric crap ton of sports betting sponsors in Europe are Chinese and targeted towards Chinese people. BJ88, Bournemouth's current sponsor's UK website, is currently coming your way soon at the time of recording this video. We are multiple games into the season, so who is this sponsorship even for? I'll give you a hint. Not British people. Alfie at HITC7s actually made a great video on this 2 years ago. I suggest giving it a watch if you haven't. When it comes to China, you are bound to always read stories about how this all works. How people gamble using VPNs, travel to nearby countries, open unsanctioned bank accounts, and so on and so forth. And then there's the accusations that some of these platforms are used for money laundering. Nobody can confirm this. I definitely am not. I just read it somewhere online. Also, this entire channel is satire. I've mostly spoken about high-profile situations so far in this video, but the world of sports is vast. Transgressions at the top level are bound to be caught due to the money at stake for everyone involved. Betting scandals are not so easy to spot at the lower levels where there's no VAR, no stats, no order. For that reason, many will always be skeptical of what's real and what isn't. With all that being said, I guess it's time for my own opinion. I'm not actually vehemently against gambling, nor am I for it, as long as bad actors aren't involved. And you might be sitting there thinking that that's an unrealistic thing to think, and you're probably right. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone because I don't gamble myself, but I also don't see anything wrong with someone who is of age, of sound mind and reason, and in a good enough financial position, putting a couple bucks down on a game as a controlled hobby with a vetted, legitimate platform. I've seen people spend a lot more on gaming consoles, PC setups, unnecessary cars, shoes, and more, all of which can be just as crippling and addictive depending on the personality type. I'm a big advocate for doing what you want with your time and money, but I also think that it's very important for you to be truthful of whether what you're doing with your time and money is problematic or not. This is something that isn't really helped by the predatory nature of some of these gambling companies. You know, maybe not all of them because I'm not familiar with all of them, but a lot of the ones that we've come across. Free bets and increased odds for new customers are tactics we've all seen before. And I know that me saying that I'm pretty much indifferent to this doesn't really mean much because I'm not their target customer. They don't really care about me. They care about the people that are going to go out and spend money on their platforms, which a lot of the times are the most vulnerable of us. So again, I want to repeat what I said at the beginning of the video. If you or anyone that you know are suffering from any sort of gambling or any sort of addiction, for that matter, I implore you to at least take a look at some of the resources that I've put in the description. I know they don't cover the entire world, but it is a step to getting help. And please stay safe. Please take care of yourselves, your loved ones, everybody.